Town Bank Mortgage, NMLS number 512138, is an equal housing lender. This podcast is for informational purposes only. And now, the man born with the 5 o'clock shadow and with the NMLS number 2028-201. He is a gentleman. He is a scholar. He is
Tyler Cralle.
All right, welcome everyone to the latest edition of the Cape Fear Report. I, of course, am Tyler Cralle, loan officer at Town Bank Mortgage right here in Wilmington, North Carolina. And joining me on the program today is, I actually don't know how to describe him because he wears many, many hats. So we're going to get into all of that. But Travis Beatty is joining me here on the program. And Travis, thanks for being here, man. I appreciate it.
Dude, absolutely. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate you inviting me on.
And I do want to say, this is going to be one of the first times where I'm actually a little insecure because you might have a better radio voice than I do. And so it's like...
Are you telling me I missed my calling?
Definitely not. You're definitely doing much better than...
One of my biggest fears is some like hidden talent I did not know I had. You're telling me I got it now. Thanks.
Well, it's a great talent, but it pays nothing. Right? There's no money in it. It is a worthless talent. I can tell you that much. But Travis, thanks for being here, man. And as always, I'd love to kind of start from the beginning. And so talk about kind of how you got into real estate.
You know, again, I grew up in a real estate family in Virginia. I always was around real estate, whether it be, you know, the maintenance side of it or just dealing with, just picking up properties. My father, he's been in real estate since the late 60s, always purchasing properties, managed his own. And just would, again, buying properties and renting it out, and primarily to college students. We grew up in Harrisonburg, Virginia, where James Madison's at.
Okay.
So,
that's a big, it's like, I've noticed it because of UNCW. You've seen like this growth of student housing where it's like you have like that kind of area near UNCW where there's nothing but student housing. And so I didn't know if that was like a new thing, but so, apparently it's sort of been a thing for a while.
It's always been there. And with student housing, it takes a particular landlord to deal with students.
Yeah, no, I would say.
So there's a lot of turnover. There's a lot of headache with it, but however, it's pretty lucrative too, because they're going to pay a premium, based on the basic market. Whereas if I'm trying to rent to a family, they can't, typically a family's not going to be able to afford that. But
yeah.
You get 3 or 4 guys together, 3 or 4 girls together, they'll pay $500, $600 up to, I think it's $800 a bedroom. Some people are paying now for a house. So it's lucrative for that. So I think that's kind of how my father got into it. I think he literally bought a house. It was a duplex, lived in one side, and
that's how
out the other, and they just basically kept flipping it. And so I picked up kind of that mindset on how to basically get into real estate in that way.
Well, and I guess has student loans changed? I would think student loans changed a lot too with the accessibility of student loans and people being able to roll those rent payments.
We're huge on student loans in our family. We want this is where vested interest comes in and policy plays. So yeah, it absolutely comes into there.
Yeah.
But so a lot of these students we dealt with it actually. Some of their obviously their loan payment was to pay for housing. So we're hoping that spigot doesn't cut off too hard, but that's definitely part of it.
Well, it's amazing. What has happened with student housing where, it's like, I remember when I was going to school and, I was at a smaller school, but you lived like kind of these rundown houses, and it was sort of like the Animal House kind of thing. And I look at these houses nowadays, these like apartment complexes, and it's like swimming pools, and they have rock walls, and these like looks like gyms you'd see like in LA, and then it's like they got tanning beds. And I'm like, man, you're setting your guys up for a rough first year out of school.
That is not my family's. We were more the Animal House, the kind of like we cater to the average student.
I gotcha. Okay.
But, what was cool about our properties, majority of our properties are all adjacent to campus. So that was, that I picked up on that. That was the first lesson, like you always say, location, real estate. So I learned that pretty quickly. Hey, we might have to have the best product. However, because of our location, people are willing to pay that premium if we don't have the pool or don't have whatever. So that's, one thing. First rule of real estate is location, location. So I learned that real early.
No, that's the number one rule. Always important to remember. So let's kind of start. So your family was in it, and like I said, you do a lot of things, but the first thing you got into was buying and selling real estate, right?
Correct. So I graduated again. I was the black sheep of the family. Everyone went to JMU. I wanted to go to the beach, so I ended up here at UNCW. Graduated after, studious 8 years of going there to class every day. Had a great time, but had to move on.
Was it really 8 years?
It was off and on.
I did 7.5. So if you got 8, you got me beat.
We'll do that then. So it was a good time. Learned a lot. Learned a lot about myself and how to interact. Honestly, the best 8 years of my life, because I got to figure out how to interact with a lot of different people. So anyways, I didn't want to go back to school just yet, and didn't really know what I wanted to do. So I was thinking about going to law school. So, hey, look, let me take a year off. I needed to do something. So I worked, and I got my real estate license. Ended up getting licensed in 2013. I hung my license with Century 21 in 2014, and then basically started my general brokerage path. So that's kind of how I got into it. At that time, if I don't, who's listening, the market here was not great. We had a lot of short sales still, a lot of foreclosures. And, so I cut my teeth, kind of learning that business and putting a lot of offers there for short sales and going down the auctions down to the courthouse and just got my book of business the hard way.
Yeah. I mean, it does seem like what's interesting about that is people that did start kind of after the 08, 09 and missed kind of the run up of, 4, 5, and 6. Is that, you sort of learn this kind of market where it's like the short sales and people just very desperate to sell homes, and you had lower price. And so it seems like that market, you like kind of learn a skill, and then it's like that market doesn't exist anymore. It's like,
it's a skill. It's one of those skills, like, it's great to have, but it's absolutely worthless in a hot market.
Yeah.
Because there's no benefit to it. So I learned a lot, and I learned just the ins and outs, especially finding the deals and finding out how these properties cash flow. So there's a lot of that in the back end that I learned, that kind of pivoted forward. Not so much for just general brokers, but that, in my opinion, general brokerage is a cakewalk compared to what I got into the business doing. So everything else kind of fell together as the market improved. Our market.
Yeah, I mean, I think what's kind of funny also about looking at that time period of kind of after the crash is that we just saw probably. I mean, I know if you look at the statistics on the the loan or the mortgage side, most loan originations ever in 20, and then 21 I think was, and maybe 22 was maybe the biggest year ever. And then you saw record high existing home sales, new home sales, and everything. And so now we've fallen off those highs, and it's like everyone kind of forgot what a normal market looked like. And so now everyone's like, here comes the crash, here comes this. And it's like, guys, we're still way above where we were.
It's funny to me because it's like, man, again, I remember it. And I'm like, this is just the normal market.
Yeah.
This is, doesn't sell, like listing a home and selling a home in one day or 1 week. That's not normal. It's not how it works, So getting back to, again, I didn't like 21, 22. It was a madhouse, and it was annoying. It was just annoying because before you can even get your foot in the door, there was already 5 offers on the home, and so I was the opposite. I was just like, I kind of hung my hat up and kind of was like, I'm gonna focus on my business and getting my stuff together during this madness because I'm just not gonna sword fight with 15 other agents on the property.
Yeah, well, it was great, and now we're kind of seeing the aftermath of that, and you're seeing some of these. Because the reporters love to report on it. I'll see like an article in the Journal, and it's like this guy bought a house in 21, and there were 20 offers, and so he overbid by all this much and didn't really kind of understand what he was doing. And it's like that is one of the downsides of a crazy hot market is that there's so much panic from everyone involved, from the realtor, from the buyer, from the loan officer, that like you do sort of wonder if who's getting caught up in kind of the craziness. You'd rather would spend more time with a client explaining offers and what they could possibly do.
Well, you had that situation when you're like sitting down with first-time home buyer and you're like, hey, if you want this house, you're going to have to bid $30K over, and if it doesn't appraise, where are you going to come up with that money? You have that money to do it, and a lot of I don't maybe want to generalize, but there were some conversations there that weren't had with some of these buyers. Where I was like, man, I don't feel comfortable putting in offerings for some of my clients because it's going to put you in a situation where you're either house poor or you don't have money to come up with a down payment. And then so there was several situations where I had to basically talk my clients. It's a terrible business decision, but I had to look, I don't think this is right for you, And I think that was, some agents didn't necessarily do that.
It's bad short term. Long term, it's good because you're a good agent.
I don't want to sell somebody a home that they can't afford, and they can't get into. I know that's counterintuitive, or not counterintuitive, but counter to what most people think about realtors.
Yeah.
But that's kind of my thought process on that.
Now, you of course are a team lead, and so why did you decide to kind of go that route? Because there are some people that decide not to kind of have their own kind of team and just stay a single individual agent.
So I was on a team man, we was on a team for going on probably 8 years, and my one of the other team members, Shana Morgan.
Yeah.
We ended up, and the whole team ended up at Remax Central. So we got together. We were still selling. We were still doing good. I kind of I was not taking any more leads on for the team.
Yeah.
I was just getting to that point where all my business was coming in on my own. I had established that book of business over the years. So, and I was doing a lot of investing on my own too. So I kind of was at that point I need to step, and this is right when COVID was kicking off. So I kind of was like, you know what, now's the time to step back and let me kind of focus on my stuff and figure out. So I just basically broke off with myself. May of 20? So I remember the world was ending. So
yeah. It was March and April. When it really
so
went down.
I was hunkered down on one of my rental properties in Carolina Beach with my future wife. And we're like, we don't know what we're going to do. Like, I was like, I don't have a job. I'm like, I'm not going to have a job. Like, real estate. And I'll never forget, we were down there in May. It was like that May, my phone started ringing, and it didn't stop ringing for 2 years. So I had, like Shana, like she was busy, and I was like, I don't have enough, bandwidth to take on this, the leads that we're getting right now. I was like, we need to partner because I was sending her business. She's like, well, so we decided to partner up, and then formally we kind of partnered up in the next year and started our own team. And so I was letting a lot of business fall to the wayside because I had nobody else to help me. So instead of referring it out, it just was like, hey, look, we'll bring on buyer's agents like most teams start. Yeah. So that's kind of how we started that.
And yeah, I mean, so that is one of the kind of interesting things about real estate is that, you do see some people who team up, and then you have some people that are kind of just stay individual. And like I said, I mean, so you have also, besides the 2 agents, you also have other team members, correct?
We got 3 other agents on our team.
Gotcha.
So 5 of us total. So, we, it's a perfect fit. Shana was a former teacher, so she's really good on training and, that side of it. I am more of a, technical, I did a lot of renovations, new construction, and so I'm more of that aspect, technical, as far as the process going over home inspections with other agents and helping them out with that. So it's a perfect fit for what we have as a team. So we kind of bring both really, yin and yang, as what she says, to the team. So
now, before we get on, because I do want to talk about some of the other things that you do, looking at this market, and I mean, it is a down market with regards to, we are seeing, nationally, you're seeing, 20-year lows for loan originations and 20-year lows for existing home sales. I think this area is a little better, so I don't think we are as bad. But what's your sort of opinion on this market, and what do you see kind of happening over the next 5 years?
I've made money in both markets, buyers and sellers. So I tell agents all the time, you always, like anything, you always want to get listings. But in my opinion, the market, is just I always get asked this question. It's just a really funny market right now. I think. Homes I'm seeing sell quickly, I'm shocked, and then homes I'm seeing sitting there, I'm like, what's going on? Like, doesn't make any sense. I thought that would have sold pretty quickly. So I think we're starting to see some sellers realize that this isn't the same market it was 2-3 years ago, and they're starting to drop pricing on there. However, you're also having that conversation. Like, I don't want to get rid of my 3% interest rate. I don't have that desire to. I need to get this money, or if I'm not going to do it, I'm just going to sit tight. So I think we have the market's still in a deadlock, in my opinion. And I don't know if you agree with that or not.
Yeah, no. I mean, I think it's. I always tell people, and I've said this on this podcast, I don't know how many times, but it's the complete opposite of 2008, where now people are like, I'm not, I'll sell if I get the price, but otherwise I'm going to hold on to this house as long as I possibly can.
I don't blame them. Yeah, again, I don't blame sellers for doing that, and it's something's got to give at some point. And this is where I'm hoping, there's, supply and demand. It all gets back to basic supply and demand. We need more supply of homes in our area. More people want to live here than they don't. And it just, it's as just more people, more supply we have, the prices are going to come down. And as agents, I tell agents all the time, you can make money coming and going. So
no, I mean, it what's funny is it's sort of the stigma also about, home prices kind of leveling off, where it's like, it's a good thing, but then of course as a homeowner, you get a little worried, but of course it doesn't really affect you unless you're selling your house. Like it's kind of like people that look at their portfolio every day, and it's like, are you selling the stock or buying it? Like, then what do you care what you're like? When are you going to need that money? That's what you should be concerned about.
100%. And that's the worst thing you do is to go on Zillow and look at your Zillow estimate. And that's the worst thing you do, because if you're not moving in 5 years, who cares what your house worth today? The market might shift, especially in New York County. We've got such a small I think are we the smallest county, second smallest?
I think
county?
we're the second smallest geographically.
Yeah. So just based on getting back to supply and demand, more people, they want to live in New Hanover County. Yeah. So I've gotten, it's my long on the New Hanover County real estate market. I foresee it going up. I don't see it going anywhere.
Yeah.
You're going to see some changes, but there's just not enough land here, and more people want to be here than don't want to be here. So,
well, yeah, I mean, it's now what's interesting because I do want to get to development, but I also want to talk about rental properties because this is I would say probably, I want to say maybe 22 is when I started seeing people started jokingly calling it the Airbnb bust. Like this was going to cause some major problem because all these people had gotten into Airbnb properties during, COVID, low rates, and rent prices were skyrocketing, and you could borrow money for nothing. And so it was causing too many rental properties. Now you've obviously when did you start acquiring rental properties?
So my first home I bought was a foreclosure in 2014. Okay. And the main thing I was looking for a home was either a duplex or an accessory dwelling unit, something I could rent out that's not that's not in my actual house. So I found a house, and it had a 1-bedroom ADU. And so I was fixing the house up. I got the apartment fixed up first, which is in the rear. I had alley access, so I didn't have to really deal with the tenants. So this thing I heard about Airbnb, that was 2014. So it'd been around for a little bit, but I was like, I'll try it out just to throw it on there. And that first year, I got paid to live in my house. So it was like a light bulb went off. I was like, oh, this is actually can be very lucrative, and it's not that hard. I'm pretty good on, kind of automating things. So that took off, and then I bought a property in Carolina Beach with another foreclosure, oceanfront. So, and that obviously is always going to do well. So I started acquiring rental properties. I bought some portfolios around UNCW, some condos around there. So you
started with Airbnb?
Started with Airbnb,
okay,
yeah.
Gotcha.
So that was my first rental property.
And so then you also do long-term, right?
I do long-term, yeah.
Gotcha,
so the portfolio acquired, I had long-term tenants already in there. So
gotcha.
By attrition, as they move out, I usually take it over, and I'll fix them up, and I'll either, I've got 10 Airbnbs right now, 25 long-term properties. So I try to, again, just depending on the situation and what's going on, I'll either go Airbnb or long-term on there. So I'm probably going to add one more Airbnb as this tenant moves out, just to see what it is. But I've had more success with a 1-bedroom and 2-bedroom short-term rentals than I have anything else.
Well, yeah, I was going to ask that. I mean, so like people who are thinking about getting into the rental business, that's, like I said, there's this sort of, people thought this Airbnb thing was going to be a big problem, but like I said, we're maybe a little different than other markets. But then again, you have this sort of security of long-term, but then you can obviously make more money with the short-term. And so in your experience, I mean, like, just from like, if you're acquiring new properties now, are you going more towards the short-term or?
It's case by, if a deal pops in my lap, and it's all case by case. So I don't really make that decision until I start looking at all the numbers. So the ones I wouldn't go out there looking for a property right now just to put an Airbnb in, right? Okay. The numbers don't make sense. You can't make any money on there. Not at least somebody else has got some other data that I'm not seeing. So even the long-term rentals, you got to get a really good deal on it to make it a long-term rental. I don't see the cash flow there with the interest raits.
Yeah, no, I mean that, and obviously depends on how much you're putting down.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and again, if you're paying cash or whatever, there's intangibles there. I'm broke. I can't pay cash for anything. I try to leverage.
Not liquid.
I'm bringing 25% and letting the bank pick 25 sometimes, and letting the bank pick up the rest. And one of these days I'll be liquid. I don't have to worry about that. But, so that's the beauty of real estate, leveraging. So,
that's true. That's true. Well, I mean, it's funny because I had Don Harris on from Intercoastal, and that's what he was saying is that what do you call it? OMP, other people's money.
That's right.
Or OPM, other people's money.
Somebody's going to give me. That's why I say, like, I had a client that could have paid cash for $2 million beach house. This is during the prime of it. And I was like, no. I was like, go to Wells Fargo, go to your private. They got like a 2.7% rent. I was like, that's free money. Let somebody else hold that note for you and do it.
Well, it's so funny. So the other day, there's a Steve Mirren, who is the White House economic advisor, and he right now is he was picked by President Trump to fill this seat on the Federal Reserve Board, and a story came out about him having this primary residence that he was now renting out, and it was kind of caught up in all this political stuff. But what was funny about it was the rate that he had on that house was 2.375. And I went, what? I didn't think rates got that low. And then we looked it up, and the 15-year, I think, fell the low of 2.1. And so I was like,
yeah. And there's, you start having that type of money where you can pay, again, these people were tied into private wealth equity at Wells Fargo. So there's also some other advantages there and having who whatever. But needless to say, even if it was, 3%, that's still ridiculously low for the, the market. So, but yeah, again, I try to, I'll put 25% down on most of my properties I buy. But yeah, it's not 0% down like we saw crazy like back in the day. So don't everybody freak out on me, and that's still a good amount of money. So a lot of the banks are covered. And again, it just depends on what's going on with the property. I've had to bring more money down because maybe the cash flow didn't.
Yeah. No, that's the thing is that it's really hard right now to make a property work. You're putting like 10% down. It's just you really do have to kind of put a minimum of 25
minimum
for that payment to make sense.
That's what I'm saying. I've had to bring 30-35% before, just because it was projected numbers weren't coming out to what they were saying. My numbers were higher than theirs, and of course they're not going to give me the money unless
the rent schedule's got to match.
So whatever.
And what's interesting about that is, one of the reasons that you're hearing the horror stories is I think people being unprepared for being a landlord. And the one issue that, because I remember it was an article, I think, in the Journal, and it reminded me a lot of the run up to '08, where it was these people who were like, yeah, I was working, a minimum wage job, and now I'm making $150,000 a year doing, in this case, Airbnbs. And then, back then it was like becoming a loan officer or like a realtor or whatever. And it was like, that's probably a sign of something bad's happening in the market. But they were making money, and then they were immediately buying another property. And they had no reserves for that inevitable repair that you're going to have to pay for.
I had 4 of those this year where I had to call up and the HVAC's gone, and next thing you know, that's $12,000 right there. So I had a lot of those this year, and that's the best thing too. You can write it off, but however, that kills your cash flow. So having to come out of pocket for it. But again, that's not everybody is fit for the landlord life, and I grew up in the landlord life. I distinctly remember my dad buying me a smaller lawnmower because I was too small to push the big one, and I had to get a mini one. So I was the lawn guy, and I had to mow the grass, help him on the property. So not everybody's cut out for it, and I'm kind of glad for that because it gives me more.
That's true. That's very true.
If everybody was a landlord, we wouldn't have any renters.
Well, to me, it's kind of like most businesses, but the one that probably I think is the best illustration of that is usually restaurants. It's like, if you notice, there's restaurants come up, they go down, they disappear, and then there's some people that figure out how to do it, and they have a bunch of them. And then it's like everyone like, oh, I'd love to own a restaurant, and they try it and go, I can't do this, and then it goes under.
I'm having a heart attack even thinking about trying to own a restaurant, run a restaurant. And that's a great point, because it's not everybody is cut out for restaurants, especially restaurants. Man, that's a hard job.
Tiny profit margin, and like I said, you just have to know. It's a lot of micromanaging. I worked in a restaurant, and it's like you got to make sure everyone's doing what they're supposed to be doing, and you got to be on them. And like I said, but it's very glamorous. Where I think kind of people think the same thing about being a realtor, where it's like they're like, oh, I could own a restaurant, everyone would come in, and everyone would be hobnobbing with me, and I'll be the place to be. And it's like, so people get kind of, I think, infatuated with that idea. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, wow, this actually sucks.
It's so funny. All the restaurateurs that act like that or do that, they're usually out of business when
I know, exactly.
So all the ones that are successful in there, and it's amazing to me, you're right, like the people that are successful in restaurants usually have multiple restaurants, and that to me has always impressed me a lot, because I'm like, dude, that's a lot of work.
Oh yeah.
And I know work hard, but man, I'm not that hard of a worker to own multiple restaurants.
Well, but it's kind of like real estate, right? Where people, like I always bring this up, people watch the reality shows and they go, man, look at that. Like I can make $1 million a year selling like 1 or 2 houses, and I get to live this awesome lifestyle. And it's like, obviously you've seen it slow down from the craziness, but is that like kind of like a reality check that when you talk to maybe a new realtor and be like, hey, listen, it's going to be rough,
man. We do tell them, we got to bring we interview agents, and we're like, look, this is not, the job is calling people. 95% of this job is calling people, picking up the phone. It's not glamorous. You're getting leads. It's cool to get, that cool shot where you're at the attorney's office getting the big check. We all, we all love that, but it's not real life, and then you got, the agents like that, like you go researched some of these reality TV agents, and they're like, their dad owned whatever company, you know, and so it's hilarious. It's just a reality TV show, and having been on, I told you I was on Beachfront Bargain Hunters.
That's right. That's right.
So it's all reality. I was in a reality TV show. It's all bullshit. Excuse my language.
Yeah, no, it's all good. We're not on the radio. And so was that like a single show, or was that like
just a one-off show?
Okay, gotcha. Like the House Hunter stuff.
Yeah, we did that in 2014, 15. I forget, right around there. So. Clients of mine they still live in Carolina Beach. Actually, they bought their second home down there.
Was it like the show where it's like you pick the 3 properties?
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
The home was already bought.
Okay.
I think there's like a formula. The producer told me, she's like, usually if they say, I don't know what it was, but like, if you're watching the show, that's the home they picked.
Okay, gotcha. Okay. No, it is funny because, you know, I mean, we don't have that on our side. There's no like Netflix shows about being a loan officer.
Dude, I wish I had clients that would pick 3 homes out and we're buying one of them. That would be amazing.
I know, exactly.
They don't showing the 30 homes scattered across 3 counties, and they don't show that part of it.
Yeah, I mean, that's because it's not as, you know, I think it's most, I mean, even like, you look at, like one of my favorite shows is The Practice, and I have a bunch of friends who are attorneys, and it's like that's not their life. Like they're not doing murder cases every day and on TV. It's like
all my buddies are attorneys, man. I feel like I'm an attorney vicariously through them. My brother-in-law's attorney, my neighbor's attorney, good buddies, and I try to use all these legalese. They're like, please stop.
Yes, they're like,
you're embarrassing yourself. Just let us handle this. Just stop talking.
I'm like, I hear enough of it that I can kind of use it in every day and impress people who aren't attorneys. But when I'm around attorneys, I'm like, stop talking. You're not fooling us.
It's
not osmosis.
I get that same conversation, the same task every time I'm around them. But
it helps because you need it for all your contracts. So it's because attorneys.
I got an attorney for most things, which is great.
Yes.
On speed dial. So.
Now, okay, so you like I said, you got started kind of as a realtor. You're doing the rental property thing. You're also doing development. And so was that the last thing I mean, I'm guessing that was in your kind of course, right? So you started off doing the rental properties, and then you were like, hey, I can build some houses.
Yeah, so I was doing renovations. I'd done some flips, and I didn't really like that the flip is like doing flips. And I'd renovated rental properties as well.
Yeah.
I hated it. It was a lot of work, a lot of logistics, and you're running into a lot of headaches, like unknown stuff that you couldn't account for in your budget. So didn't like that, aspect. I'll still do them, but my first spec home was actually directly across the street from the home the foreclosure I bought. Okay. So that was 2015. It was a teardown. It was like the street I lived on was dilapidated. There was several dilapidated homes on there that hadn't been lived in years. So that one ended up selling for $30K, and we were looking at it, and I was like, man, you can't. This is a functionally obsolescent house. You can't do anything with it. It's a 1-bedroom, 1-bath. It was an old mill home from Spofford Bills back in the day. Okay. And so I was like, man, honestly, the value in the land isn't here. We'll just tear it down and we'll build a new house. We end up doing that, and made great money on it. Not great, but decent money, and it helped me because it improved the neighborhood. So we ended up buying the house next door, thinking we were going to get that same thing. And lo and behold, Florence came through. And so literally the week before we got this, or the week after we got our CO, or sorry, week before we got the CO, and then Florence was on the way, and the market, I don't know if you remember, the market it was like recession level market for about 9 months to a year. Nobody wanted to come here, and you were just constantly getting bombarded. The house flood. Did it have any storm damage? So we ended up breaking even on that house. So we kind of put a little hiatus on everything because we were like, man, we don't, it's kind of like did a lot of work on it. But then we kind of, this is my partner, he's still my partner, and we ended up ramping it back up, and we've done, we're working on, I think this will be our 9th project so far, and we got probably 9 lots in the works right now. So our goal is to do about 10 to 15 spec homes, infill development homes around the Tri-County area in the next year or so.
So, do you have a partner with the rental properties, or is that all?
That's all me.
Okay, gotcha.
So
okay.
I got a partner with my general brokerage, and I got a partner with my development company.
Gotcha. So with the development, I mean, there's no doubt. Once again, this is something else I think that's also kind of falls in that category where you just see some really superstar developers, and I mean,
that's not me.
There's a lot of money in development. There's no doubt. And so, I mean, what's sort of from your perspective, kind of getting into it. And so when did you kind of start back up again after?
That would have been, let's see now, we did 2017. So it was probably by 2018, 2019, we started getting back into it and doing projects. So we were finding that the renovations were just, the numbers were just slim there, and there was a lot of unknowns. So we were losing, I was losing money on projects here and there. And then right again, COVID kicked off. We saw a flood, not only of investors, but just people flipping properties in our market.
Oh yeah.
So there was a ton of that going on. So we, not only were people fighting over turnkey properties, but investors were fighting over, basically renovation projects, all that. And that was, to get into this business, kind of the easiest entry level is doing a renovation. A lot of people weren't doing it. So we were like, well, there's a ton of lots down here. They're not selling as much as what we know they're worth. So we ended up buying lots up and buying as many as we could, and putting infill projects, especially downtown. There's a lot of opportunity down there that we saw people were missing.
Well, yeah, and talk about the infill, because people might not know exactly what that is versus maybe other development.
Infill is basically you're utilizing the existing infrastructure in a community. So, for instance, it doesn't necessarily have to be downtown. Maybe it's an existing neighborhood they developed 30 years ago, and for whatever reason, John Doe did not develop that lot. So that infrastructure is there. A lot's ready to go. You can go back and basically put a home up, single family or multifamily, whatever, to basically utilize the infrastructure. So you're not impacting as much of the the system as you would if you did a clear-cut development.
Gotcha.
So we're going in there, and the best part about it is the infrastructure's there. So we can typically get going pretty quickly if we get the permits approved and all that. We don't have to go through running sewer lines and water lines and all that. So we found a niche there. And there's other, like Dave Spatrino with Plantation. They were doing that for a number of years downtown. They're one of probably the bigger ones. They still do it, but they were huge in it pre-recession, and they still do projects. But that was kind of what I saw. I saw what they were doing when I was in UNCW, and I was like, that's really neat. You can go in here, build a home in a historic neighborhood, and not only that, it's new, but it fits in with the character. I thought that was really neat. So I kind of sparked my interest in infill development as well. Actually, I lived in one of Plantation's homes in college downtown. So,
well, I mean, I think that also kind of probably also helps with a lot of the criticism that people have about development, where they see it as being not with the character that already sort of exists. And, that's like that's the number one thing that I think people complain about. I think they just choose that, but it's sort of like there is sort of a value in being like, okay, here's what this is what the block looks like. Let's make sure that what we're building kind of matches that block. And I feel like it kind of helps everyone that's involved. So the people that already own homes are happy with that, because there's this big debate about, because we do need more space. It's like, we need to make sure we're utilizing the property that we have. But I mean, I guess kind of how do you, deal with that? Because I'm sure there's a couple projects where you're like, hey, wouldn't it be good if we could get another property on here? And sort of, I mean, how often do you do that when you're looking at property, trying to get maybe higher density?
Yeah, we do. We try to. So Wilmington eased up I guess I'm going to throw another acronym out there, ADU, accessory dwelling unit. And for those not familiar, basically is not a duplex, but maybe a detached or attached separate living dwelling unit attached or on that property. So we typically, if we know we can't do it, we try to fit in an ADU on there. We've got 3 projects right now. We're coming out of the ground. We're going to have single family in the front and a detached garage ADU in the back, so 2-bedroom ADU with a garage. So we try to increase the density there, and they become more and more popular over the years. And I've been yelling about ADUs and screaming about them since I got into real estate. And it's like I was ahead of the trend, and I kind of was like, I couldn't get anybody interested in the home I bought. I tried to show it 40 times to people, and nobody wanted to buy it, so I ended up buying it. But now everybody wants an ADU, and so we're kind of capitalizing on it.
Are those easier? So if you were to be like, hey, you got a single family house, or like, maybe I'll turn it into a duplex, would it be easier just to keep the single family and do an ADU from a permit perspective?
It just depends on what it's a kind of a loaded question. It'd be easier, in my opinion, just do the ADU.
Okay.
So to try to convert it to a duplex, I think you'd have a lot more heartache with the city. ADU, they don't really count ADU as a duplex or a multifamily. It's just an accessory dwelling unit.
Yeah.
So typically a 1 or 2 bedroom, and you can't build it. There's a percentage they look at the main house on what you can build.
Okay.
There. So it's more of a smaller, kind of like a granny flat, some people call them.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're just become really, really popular because it's twofold. You can have multi-generational living there, or you have extra income, or rent it out, whatever you want to do with it. So, or have extra company, room for company when they come in town. So our markets, you've seen a lot of people.
So do you find that those are easier to get approved? Like I'm sure it's still a process, but I mean, is it pretty easy for people, to go that route versus, like I said, build?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and there's whole companies. I think there's several companies now that are focusing in our area that are strictly doing ADUs. But yeah, ADUs are right now, since they eased up the zoning on them, restrictions and setbacks, which I'm glad the city did do. They kind of followed suit with a lot of other cities around the country. It's become a lot easier to build ADUs around.
Well, yeah, I think it also, to your point, usually, especially if you're someone that has a house and you're like, I'm going to build an ADU, just from your own perspective, you're going to want to build something that looks good and is nice, and it's going to be on your property. And so I think from once again, going back to this, complaint that you hear from a lot of people is the people will build something that doesn't go with the character. If you own a house and you're building something in your backyard that you're going to be looking at every day, you're going to want to be nice, and you're going to want it to be up, kept as well. And make sure you're checking out who's renting it and who's there and everything. And so it's almost like there's a protection there for the entire neighborhood.
Well, I and here this adds to the home affordability. There's people in our city and town, or I don't know, I'll just say the town, or in the city of Wilmington, who maybe not have the funds to move out or have a bigger home or whatever. They're able to maybe age in place in that property. They could, instead of having to buy another house, they can put a one-level ADU in the backyard, age in place in that property. They can, when they get too old, they can move into the back, keep the front house, rent that out, and still have income coming in to maintain them through their elder years. So you see a lot of that happening in other markets, and it's definitely a bonus. And that way you keep people in the community who are vested, they're stakeholders in the community. They don't have to sell their home out and then move into a retirement home necessarily. So you're seeing a lot of that, and it just I like the flexibility on it, and it's cheaper than buying a whole new home right now, especially.
Yeah. So I know you got some projects right now in the cargo district. That's a really kind of cool spot. And it's sort of like this up and coming spot. So is that kind of why you guys kind of chose that area?
Man, these fell in our lap. These lots fell in our lap. I was always interested because I used to, my old house we used to ride our bikes down the cargo district. So when it started off, I didn't really know what. I kind of saw the vision, but now I've seen what I forget the guy's name right now. I was drawing a blank, but I saw his vision then. I was like, okay, but now it's like you're starting to see everything come together, and it's a really neat area there. And you're seeing when you go down there on a Saturday on a nice day.
Oh, yeah.
It's just incredible how many people are there walking around. So that area, when I moved to Wilmington, was blighted. There was nobody there.
Yes.
It was, I was
barren
and blighted. I think it was a brownfield. Name all the names. So it's wild to see people walking down the street with kids and yoga mats.
Oh, I know.
And
no,
right.
it is truly. What you've seen happen. Also, downtown. It's I had Commissioner Dane Scalise on, and we talked about how once again going back to the sort of higher density builds, and his argument was. The one place where we should be, they would, or we should be having as higher density builds is downtown because it can support it.
Yes.
And it's and so even kind of coming up a little bit off from downtown, which would be like the cargo district. So you're not completely downtown, but you kind of are, makes sense where it's that's where really we should be seeing way more development and kind of these cooler new kind of ideas.
Yeah, I agree. I think that, it'd be awesome if they could do an overlay district, something in 1945 that could, if you're familiar with the 1945 overlay district, which is kind of like downtown and going up towards the cargo district. It'd be nice if they could maybe look at increasing zoning on some of these lots because, a lot of lots downtown are 33 by 60. They're smaller lots. However, they're big enough, you really could support a duplex on there, a legitimate duplex. And I know they got rid of the off-street parking requirements. There's, some people probably complain about it, but man, there's enough. I still think there's enough street parking to sustain it and get more people down there. So I wish they would look at it because it's the impact between the impact fees with Cape Fear Public Utility and then utility contractor fees to tie in some of these lots. It's just not affordable to build a single family home. I would love to build homes as cheap as possible, but it's impossible. We've crunched the numbers as best we could. You cannot build a single family home downtown for less than $380 right now if you're lucky, and that's like builder grade. Yeah. So I wish they would cut. If you could increase the density, you get more units on a lot. That would help out tremendously because I'd build a duplex versus a single family home. To get more people down there. But the lingo streets are interesting. We can put ADUs on those properties. You can walk to everything there. We're doing more contemporary style homes. We got 3 homes right together. We did pick up another lot right around the corner on 14th Street that we're going to be building on a single family with the ADU. And then we got 2 more ADU projects going on right around the corner on Hill Street. So,
yeah, I mean, if you see sort of what's happening, I mean, you can look at like Mayfair, you can look at the Point where it's clearly there's people like to be able to be in like a walkable community. I mean, there's like this big debate. I see it all the time on Twitter where everyone talks about, one of the reasons why I've always thought this was a good argument. They said one of the reasons why people loved being in college, and you and me especially, is it was the only time in your life where you live in a walkable community where all your friends live nearby. You can walk to their places. You can walk to get food. You can walk to the party. You're walking. No one's driving. I mean, like you drove every once in a while, but it was mostly walking. And you see it with like the popularity of places like Mayfair where, people can live close by and walk there. And, obviously a downtown spot is the original, the OG kind of idea of a walkable community. But these cargo districts, like things like the cargo district where you do have that sort of community and you can walk to places. They have restaurants, they have cool little pop-up bars and things like that. It's like that's 100% where we should be going.
And it's not a crazy concept. We had that in our country for hundreds of years.
Yeah, I know.
So it's not like this whole zoning, everything needs to be separate thing came about in like the 60s and 70s where the car culture took off. Everybody's like, we need to drive to the mall. We got to drive over here. So, and I'm glad to see communities and Wilmington's doing a good job on it. They can, there's always room for improvement. But to increase that, and I think getting back to downtown, man, everything's there already.
Yeah,
all the infrastructure's there. If we can somehow make it so developers, small time developers like myself, can put in more density, that would cheapen up the housing for everybody. And there's a ton of undeveloped land downtown, whether dilapidated homes and or just vacant land, and there's a whole issue on why that happened too, when trying to track heirs down. But aside from that, there's if you look downtown, there's a huge opportunity down there to kind of capitalize on what we already have, and we don't have to go clear cut development neighborhoods and put it in. We got it right downtown.
Yeah, and I think to your point, going back to what you mentioned, I think there does need to be sort of I think the general public needs to realize exactly how expensive it is to build these homes, and the reason why they're charging what they're charging isn't because you guys are greedy developers who don't care about anyone. It's like, this is what it costs us to build this. And so in order just for us to make a profit, we have to charge this plus $1.
It's like, I'm not D.R. Horton, so I can't, a 2x4 cost me.
Yeah, you can't scale.
I can't scale. And I'm in a niche where I can't, we know how to build a product that's good and cheaper, but still I can only cut so much off the bone. I have to put a roof on the house, right? So, in these bigger developers, there's no incentive for them to go down and do it because I understand. I wouldn't, if I was a bigger developer, I wouldn't touch it either.
Well, but I think people also like local developers because once again, it's sort of this idea of you're living in the community, and so you're going to build a house because if you build a bad one, they're going to come knock on your door and say, "Hey, why'd you sell me this crappy house?" Versus some guy in New York who buys a bunch of land and builds a bunch of houses, never going to be impacted by the aftermath of what he built. And so I think we do want to encourage local people to be developers because you guys have a vested interest in building a quality property that someone's not going to come yell at you for.
I'm 100% right, and that's getting down to it. Again, I want to make money, and if I can make money and improve the neighborhood and bring more people downtown or wherever, I've developed, but if I can bring more people to an area that maybe was blighted or whatever, I love doing that. I love seeing blocks change, and I've seen it. I've seen my own neighborhood, my block where I used to live at. There's 4 or 5 dilapidated homes down there. We got 4, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's 8 new construction homes on that street right now. So, and the last one sold for 8 in the 800s. So it went from, I bought my house for $125 and then the construction went for $800. So a lot of people probably wouldn't like that, but yeah. but it just shows you like you can change a neighborhood just by the location. Harking back to location. Yeah. When I bought my house, location. I can get to, it's a midtown Wilmington. I can get to downtown. I can get to the beach. I can get wherever I need to go. So I'm glad seeing people kind of come back downtown and seeing the importance there. So hopefully I can be part of that and bring people around.
So what do you see happening kind of going forward? Because it does seem like you are seeing, it does seem like the growth is slowing with sort of people coming in. It's almost like, you're seeing people all of a sudden being like, Wilmington's too crowded, don't come down here. And some people are coming here and going, you know what, maybe this isn't the town for me. And so what do you see kind of happening with growth? I mean, because I do feel like we are sort of at that point where we are going to see it has to slow from what we've seen the last couple of years.
Yeah, and I think you're definitely going to see I wouldn't say hard correction, but you can't have the amount of growth we've seen in the last couple of years. It's unsustainable. We all know that. So, but I'm used to. When I got into real estate, I was, my first year in real estate, I sold like $15,000, and my commission check was $15,000. I was living at my buddy's house. So I know it's a slow market, and I think if we just plug away and improve what we have, I still think there's going to be people seeing the value in our market and people still moving here.
Yeah. No, I think at one point we're going to like connect with Myrtle Beach and just become a giant behemoth.
We talked about this. I actually had a professor at UNCW. He was an urban planning professor. It's been a while, but he used to live in South Florida. He talked about that because if you've been to South Florida, you can't tell the difference between these towns. They all run together.
Yeah.
And he's like, I foresee that probably happen between Wilmington and Myrtle Beach if the growth continues and where we're at in Brunswick County. Yeah. So I wouldn't doubt that at some point you're going to see that kind of North Myrtle and Brunswick County and all that's merged together.
I know. It's like as we move south, they come north. It's like we're going to connect to something. Like, there's no doubt. 100%. And Brunswick, I think might be the biggest geographical.
I think it is. I think it's the fastest growing.
Definitely fastest in the country.
Yeah, it's
one of the top 5. It's
so
crazy.
You're going to see that they've got so much land out there. You're going to see obviously that continue to grow, but those homes out there, they're building. You can build buy a new construction home in Brunswick County in the 300s right now. So it's just a hard. I can't compete against that. So only thing I can add, my competitive advantage is location. That's the only thing I can offer.
Well, and then once we decide what's going to happen with that bridge, I know that's one of the big concerns. But
I'll be dead by the time they build that bridge. That's not my concern at all. I'll let somebody else deal with it.
I know it feels like that way. I feel like people 30 years ago were saying they were going to be dead by the time that bridge got built.
That bridge is not going to happen in my lifetime. If that's the case, I'll be out of my mind. So I won't even worry about it.
Well, Travis, I appreciate you taking the time because you're obviously very busy wearing a lot of hats. And so appreciate you coming on here and telling us about all of them.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. I appreciate your time.